Two guys, same $50,000. 20 years later, they both have around $500,000. But one of them worked for it every single day. The other did absolutely nothing. Which one would you choose to be? Jake buys a rental property. Marcus puts the same money into index funds. They both think they made the smarter choice. They're both wrong. And by the end of this, you'll know exactly why. Here are the rules. Jake and Marcus are the same age, same city, same income, $55,000 a year. Same $50,000 saved. The only difference is what they do with it. Jake puts his $50,000 down on a $250,000 house, a nice 3-bedroom in a decent neighborhood. His mortgage is $1,330 a month. His tenant pays $1,800. On paper, that's $470 a month in profit before he spends a single dollar on anything else. Jake feels like a genius. He drives past the house on the way to work and thinks, I own that. Marcus drops the same $50,000 into a total stock market index fund. He sets up a $300 automatic contribution every month. Then he forgets about it. His coworkers ask him what he's investing in. He says index funds. They nod politely and change the subject. Nobody's impressed. That matters later. Jake collects rent every month. He's writing off mortgage interest on his taxes. He's watching comparable homes tick up in value. Everything feels real, tangible, smart. Marcus logs into his account once a quarter, sees the number go up a little, then down, then up a little more. Nothing feels like it's happening. But here's what's actually happening underneath. Jake's rent checks look great on paper. What nobody tells you is where the money actually goes. After 3 years, Jake's gross cash flow looks like $16,920. But once you subtract property taxes, insurance, a water heater replacement, a leaking roof, 1 month of vacancy, and his own time managing it, his real take-home profit is somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000 total for 3 years. Marcus, in that same time, has grown from $50,000 to around $76,000. He spent 0 hours managing anything, 0 phone calls, 0 emergencies. Before we get to year 5, there's a cost nobody budgets for, and it's not money, it's time. Jake is running a part-time job he didn't sign up for, coordinating repairs on his lunch break, screening tenants on weekends, taking calls at 10 p.m. because the furnace isn't working. Marcus is watching Netflix. That's not a knock on Jake, that's just the truth. Here's what actually comes out of that rent check every month. Vacancy. The average rental sits empty about 1 month a year. That's a full mortgage payment with 0 income to cover it. Maintenance. Budget 1 to 2% of the property's value per year. On a $250,000 house, that's up to $5,000 annually. Some years it's a $200 faucet. Other years it's a $7,000 AC unit that breaks in August when your tenant is threatening to leave. Capital expenses, roofs, furnaces, water heaters. These are guaranteed future costs. They come in chunks of $5,000 to $15,000. If you're not saving for them every month, you're not running a business. You're running on luck. Property management. Either you pay a manager 8 to 10% of rent, or you do it yourself for free. Either way, it costs you something. And the one nobody talks about, a bad tenant who knows the eviction process can cost you 3 to 6 months of rent plus legal fees. One event, an entire year's profit, gone. None of this shows up in the $470 number, but it always shows up eventually. Jake is on his 3rd tenant by year 5. He's replaced the roof for $8,500, had a plumbing emergency at $1,400, lost a month of rent between tenants. He's raised rent to $1,950, which helps, but his property taxes and insurance went up too. His real cash-on-cash return, the money he actually pockets, is hovering around 3 to 5%, not the 15 to 20 he told people about at the barbecue. Marcus is still doing nothing. His portfolio is sitting at $135,000 to $150,000. He didn't pick stocks, he didn't time the market, he just didn't touch it. And here's what's happening in the math. Compound growth is boring for the first 5 years. Then it becomes something else entirely. After 10 years, Jake's property is worth around $335,000 to $350,000. After his remaining mortgage, his equity is roughly $170,000 to $184,000. Marcus's portfolio is sitting at $165,000 to $180,000. He put in $86,000 total. The rest is pure compounding. No debt, no tenants, no 2 a.m. calls. And if Marcus had bumped his contribution by just $200 more a month, his 20-year portfolio jumps to $550,000 to $600,000. In the stock market, small increases in contribution are multiplied by compounding. In real estate, increasing your investment usually means buying another property, another mortgage, and doubling your workload. Now, to be fair, stocks have real risks too. In 2008, the market dropped 37%. In March 2020, it dropped 34% in a single month. If Marcus had $150,000 and watched it fall to $95,000 in a few weeks, that's not a number on a screen, that's gut-wrenching. And the data is brutal on this. Most regular investors panic sell during crashes and buy back in after the recovery. They lock in losses at the worst possible time. There's also no monthly check. Dividends on a total market fund are about 1.5 to 2% yield. On $150,000, that's maybe $200 a month. And there's no leverage. Marcus used $50,000 to control $50,000 in assets. Jake used $50,000 to control $250,000. That 5-to-1 leverage is why real estate creates more millionaires than the stock market in almost every survey. Real estate isn't a bad investment, it's a misunderstood one. It wins when the rent-to-price ratio is strong, when monthly rent is at least 0.8 to 1% of the purchase price. It wins when you treat it as a business, not a side hustle. It wins big with house hacking. Live in one unit, rent the others, reduce your housing costs to near zero while building equity. The stock market can't do that. And if you understand 1031 exchanges, you can roll profits into a new property, defer capital gains, and grow your portfolio tax-free in ways stock investors can't replicate without retirement accounts. Jake and Marcus both thought they made the smart choice. Jake thought real estate was the proven path. Marcus thought the market would do the work. Neither of them sat down and mapped out what their decision actually costs in dollars, in time, in stress, and in risk over 20 years. The real trap isn't real estate. It isn't stocks. The real trap is picking either side based on a YouTube thumbnail, a podcast clip, or something your uncle said at Thanksgiving, without ever running the full numbers for your own situation. Most people will never do this. They'll pick a side and defend it forever. Don't be most people. If you want to see what happens when you do both at the same time, own property and invest in the market simultaneously, that video is next. The math is different from what either Jake or Marcus expected, and it might change everything you think you know.